The girl got married 5 times by age 16. Like her neighbor Rose, she was born into royalty but faced a tragic fate. Throughout her life she was manipulated by her family, but with one difference. Rose dominated throughout. But Ruby, our protagonist, was different. To stay alive, she had to suppress her disgust and play the role of an innocent flower. Her family seemed to love her, but in reality they were all more twisted than each other. She had to sit on her older brother's lap during meals. Her father, despite being an all-powerful pope, used his daughter in fraudulent marriages for his own benefit. People said the pope's daughter was a spy, a woman of poor character and evil ways. And now he had found another good husband for his daughter. Second brother and Gio still had some conscience. It hadn't even been 3 months since his last marriage. As the strongest knight of the South, he could go to the battlefield himself. Faced with such drama, Ruby felt dizzy. What must come will come. She forced a smile and asked, "So who is it this time?" Father said kindly, "It's the pride of Polentana. Not only is he the king's most beloved nephew, but he's also a powerful knight of the north and extremely handsome." But what he never expected was that this extremely handsome man would later slaughter his entire in-law family. After being stunned for 3 seconds, her brother came close to his sister's ear. Gently stroking her cheek, Ruby felt both fearful and resistant. Even if she was unwilling, she could only very happily accept father's proposal. Her parents praised her for being so good. Brother also contentedly kissed her forehead. "Our Ruby is so good." Ruby vomited all her food in disgust. In this life she wasn't much different from her previous one. The family that adopted her only appeared harmonious on the surface. In fact, her adoptive parents had both cheated on each other. The only sister who was kind to her had died. The eldest brother seemed normal, but he was actually a pervert like her adoptive father. If she showed any slight disobedience, she would pay a painful price. Unexpectedly, this life was identical to her previous one. As an evil woman, she was destined to be killed by righteous people, and it would be her marriage partner. The male lead Iske possessed both beauty and strength, but he was an ascetic handsome man. He never showed interest in women. However, he was extremely good to his sister. The reason he agreed to marry Ruby was to prevent his sister from marrying that bastard Gio, and the reason for slaughtering his in-laws was because his sister was poisoned by his wife. No one could have imagined that the princess who received endless love was actually a puppet being manipulated. Everything was controlled by her brother behind the scenes. This time, after being apart for just a short while, her brother came to play nice again. If she wasn't happy with this marriage, she could tell him. Ruby just wanted to roll her eyes at her brother twice. If she told the truth, she'd definitely get beaten up. She turned her head away nervously. "It's not that I'm unhappy, I just want to live with brother forever." Brother gently held his sister's head. Despite his seeming human appearance, who knows what he might do the next second? While showing endless affection for his sister, he continued to use and hurt her. His split personality was chilling. Having suffered greatly, Ruby found a way to survive. That was to act. She squeezed out 2 tears, appearing very reluctant to leave her brother. Brother looked at her tenderly. "Just think of it as going on a trip. I'll come get you back in just half a year." He told his sister not to worry too much, he would visit her often. Ruby felt speechless. Whether he visited or not really didn't matter. She just wanted to stay alive now. Soon it was her wedding day. On the surface she cried, appearing very reluctant to leave, but in her heart she couldn't be happier. Father apologized for not letting brother accompany his daughter. Ruby played along with father's act of paternal love, but in reality she wanted to give him a hard slap. He clearly knew that rumors about her relationship with her brother were spreading wildly. Couldn't he see how much the northern envoys disliked her? Was he going blind or just pretending not to understand? The only somewhat normal person in this family was Gio. Although he was prideful and prone to causing trouble, he had never hurt Ruby. She would probably really miss him later. However, her controlling older brother showed no reluctance to part with her. "Anyway, once you're married and stay there for half a year, I'll come bring you home." But this time his wishes wouldn't come true. This time she was determined not to return, leaving her disgusting family behind. Her husband wasn't a good person either. Even though the bride had arrived, he was still chatting idly with friends in the wilderness. But it didn't matter. Ruby hadn't hoped for her husband's love anyway. Since he wouldn't come to receive her, she would walk back herself. In the huge castle, only her husband's sister Erin received her. Erin was beautiful but cold in demeanor. Ruby was stunned by her beauty at just a glance. She showed a harmless smile, wanting to get closer to her sister-in-law. After all, she had a bad reputation. But her sister-in-law always maintained a stern face, still calling her Madame. This made her somewhat awkward. She hesitated for a long while. "Can you call me Ruby?" Although saying this showed a lack of pride. But she was alone in a foreign land, both confused and afraid. "Okay." Erin didn't hesitate. Ruby was excited like a child. She tightly held her sister-in-law's hands, showing immense gratitude. "Can I call you Erin too?" she asked shyly. "I don't want you to be overly cautious here, but being too polite can easily lead to misunderstandings." Meaning, stop pretending, just show your true nature. No one knew that the notorious evil woman was actually a silly fool. Ruby was used to such misunderstandings, as long as people thought she wasn't threatening enough. After dinner it was time to rest. "This room is truly my dream room. Not only did it have a large balcony, but from it you could see the pink ocean. This was all sister-in-law's work. I wonder if Madame is satisfied? How could she not be satisfied? Ruby was more than satisfied. But brother has gone out to fight monsters. If he returns late, you should rest early, Aaron apologized. But Ruby was secretly delighted. Best if he never returned. She never wanted her husband's love. The imagination was beautiful, but reality was harsh. She woke up freezing in the middle of the night. It turned out the fire had been extinguished. She immediately had a bad feeling. She had heard that the north had many monsters, and holy fire was lit every night. Unless someone deliberately extinguished it, the holy fire wouldn't go out for no reason. She suddenly remembered the maid who had been following behind the holy fire during the day. Her gaze had been strange. Could it have been her? Thinking of this, Ruby's scalp tingled. Suddenly, there was a whooshing sound from behind. Now she was really in trouble. She wanted to escape, but her body wouldn't move. The maid screamed in terror. Her sister-in-law shouted her name and rushed in. At the critical moment, a sharp sword flashed. The monster was killed with one strike. Ruby opened her eyes to look. The person who saved her was her husband, who disliked her. Why did you do this? Her husband's eyes were cold. He believed the woman was staging this herself. Actually, one couldn't blame him for thinking this way. Who made the Princess of Rotana have such a bad reputation? Not only had she been married 5 times, she had also hurt several husbands. One of them was rejected for marriage because she said his thing was too small. Since then, he had become reclusive and never left home. No one was more eye-catching than this woman. Male lead Isuke darkened his face. Or is this one of your excuses to break off the marriage? Ruby had expected her husband to dislike her, but didn't expect her image had fallen to such depths. How would she live her days from now on? Fortunately, sister-in-law was nice. She began speaking up for Ruby. Ruby's eyes welled with tears, vowing to protect sister-in-law well. She moved closer to sister-in-law, explaining that she really did wake up to find the fire extinguished. Is someone trying to harm you? My sister or me? Isuke didn't believe a word she said. Alright, maybe I sleepwalked and put it out myself. Ruby admitted fault while crying, promising never to do it again. Perhaps unable to bear seeing a woman cry. Though Isuke wanted to ask more, he finally turned and left. On her first day of marriage, she left her husband with an extremely bad impression. Ruby, who already had anorexia, completely lost her appetite. Sister-in-law promised her such things wouldn't happen again. But to survive, Ruby had no choice but to try pleasing her husband, only by appearing as innocent as possible. When sister-in-law was poisoned, would she have a chance of surviving under her husband's hand? She carried a fruit basket, and thick-skinned went to her husband's training camp. Her heart was racing with anxiety. Who are you looking for? A blonde man startled her. He was part of yesterday's wedding escort, so he recognized Ruby at a glance. Hearing she was looking for her husband, his jaw nearly dropped in shock. Hey Isuke, your wife is here. Your wife came to find you. Then came Isuke's cursing voice. Ruby hid behind a pillar, breaking out in cold sweat. Isuke suddenly appeared behind her. What are you doing here? Ruby stammered that because of this morning's incident, she came to see if he was angry. Isuke looked thoroughly impatient. Now that you've seen, go back. Watching her husband walking further away, Ruby hurriedly went forward and grabbed him. Unexpectedly, husband turned around, knocking over her fruit basket. This was her bonus point weapon, and sister-in-law had said these fruits were very expensive. Following the principle that food dropped within 3 seconds isn't dirty, she quickly picked up the fruits. What are you doing now? Not only did her husband not help, he even stole her lines. She was furious, but still had to say sorry. Since that's how it is, don't blame her for being unreasonable. Her tears poured out frantically. I just came to clear up misunderstandings. However, husband wasn't moved by this. He even felt it wouldn't matter if he was dumped by a woman today. This wasn't what protagonist Ruby wanted. She had to try something more dramatic. I like you, it was love at first sight, she confessed with all her might, making all the knights cheer for her wildly. Oh yeah, she really admired her own acting skills. Husband turned back, his eyes full of killing intent. Ruby felt too guilty to look directly at him. She knew she didn't deserve to be liked. But among those who saved her from danger, husband was the first. I just admire you, want to repay you, is that not okay? She had already confessed to a man, even if people thought it childish. As long as she got a response, there was still hope. However, when she opened her eyes, he was already gone. But she wouldn't give up. While husband wasn't dealt with yet, a love rival appeared. She was Isuke's childhood friend Floria. Hello, Lady Rudabea. The maid's looks at her all changed. Ruby sensed danger. Who doesn't know how to act cute? I'm very happy to meet you too. Her performance left even her love rival stunned. Judging by that look, she probably wasn't a good person either. Today was the palace night banquet. Sister-in-law Erin and Floria, with their good backgrounds and looks, became everyone's targets for flattery. Ruby remembered her former self. No matter how miserable she was behind the scenes, as long as she held the title of Pope's daughter, she was envied by thousands. But now compared to the Northerners, she was like a dwarf. Yet this didn't stop others from flattering her, because they all wanted to know the Pope's movements. These people are so thick-skinned, friend, sister-in-law suddenly commented. Ruby almost dropped her jaw. Her words really didn't match her beauty. But what happened next left her completely frozen. Her love rival actually called her husband's nickname intimately right in front of her. Isuke turned his head at the sound, only to see his wife greeting him. He immediately turned and left, leaving Ruby extremely awkward. The love rival stood beside her sympathizing, saying she would go teach Isuke a lesson. Ruby's small hands clenched tighter and tighter. She strode towards that pair of backs. Anyway, everyone already knew she was neglected on her first wedding night and her husband was always avoiding her. Might as well go all out. She doesn't mind embarrassing herself again. Seeing how aggressively she approached, everyone thought she was going to fight. They all felt nervous for her. "I'm so happy to see you." She showed a sunny smile, boldly praising her husband for looking handsome today. Although she super wanted to slap the man twice, she now had to work hard at being a good fan. Isuke frowned slightly. Was this woman sick? Didn't you firmly promise not to bother me? Ruby was touched. Husband actually remembered what she said. She was satisfied. I absolutely won't appear to bother you in the future, because she would only hide and watch secretly. Thinking the act had gone far enough, she better escape quickly. Unexpectedly, husband suddenly grabbed her shoulder. Do you want to die? Ruby was completely confused. Had she triggered some death trap? Of course she didn't want to die, but the hand on her shoulder pressed harder and harder. Then why do you want to hide and watch me? She was in tears from the pain. I just want to see you so much. Did husband suspect she wanted to assassinate him? That would obviously be suicide. Could she do that? The blonde-haired man stepped forward at this point. Miss, this behavior is indeed very dangerous. Ruby didn't understand. It turned out that Northern Knights usually enhance their power to track magical artifacts. Knights would enter an overexcited state. If anyone was nearby, they could accidentally be hurt by the powerful sword energy. Ruby awkwardly fidgeted. Well, who made her a native southerner? She had already apologized, but husband showed no sign of letting go. Aaron complained that brother didn't go home. The love rival also patted his shoulder, agreeing. How can you bear to leave when there are so many beauties at home? But Isuke listened to no one. The love rival complained publicly that Isuke no longer listened to her. Sister-in-law couldn't help but comment that her brother never listened to anyone, not even bothering to pretend. The love rival feigned surprise and turned to Ruby. Madam, do you like horseback riding? Ruby smiled foolishly. Although I'm not very good at riding, I quite like it. But she was lying. Although her previous life wasn't good, she had learned all the noble sports thoroughly. At times like this, there's always someone who likes to stir up trouble. Floria's riding skills were personally taught by Isuke. The blonde woman watched with amusement, eager to see them clash publicly. Ruby didn't mind at all. When it came to acting, she was an expert. She smiled foolishly. Thank you for your concern, but I can't take up a busy person's time over such a trivial matter, neither offensive nor unreasonable. Who could find fault with that? Seeing they couldn't stir up trouble, the gossipy ladies started discussing the swordsmanship competition held every 3 years. Ruby's big brother would surely come then. One husband was troublesome enough, now adding a big brother, she felt depressed and drank a few more cups. She went out for some air but almost got knocked over. Ruby glanced. It was a handsome man with curly hair, Roland, Floria's brother. Although she had a harmless face and smiled apologetically, his gaze made people feel chilled. Seeing the incoming hostility, Ruby knew she was his most hated person. Sure enough, after just a few words of flattery, Roland suddenly changed tone. Who in this world doesn't know Madam's reputation? You are the Pope's daughter after all. His words were full of sarcasm. Ruby played dumb as usual, saying she really had no achievements worth mentioning. Hearing this, Roland got even more excited. There's a popular song lately that's perfect for you. He cleared his throat. The lyrics basically mocked Ruby's inappropriate relationship with her non-blood brother. Unfortunately, he only sang halfway before someone grabbed his ear. How dare you talk nonsense in front of Madame? I'll tear your mouth apart. Roland's ear was distorted from being pulled. Ruby awkwardly helped plead for him. She didn't want to hear this person's apology at all. Once his ear was released, Roland fled like a rat. The blonde man looked very apologetic, respectfully apologizing to Madame, worried she had a bad experience. Ruby looked pitiful, saying she was actually used to it, just afraid her husband would believe such rumors. The blonde man immediately became flustered, then spilled all his friend's personality traits. Isuke just had no experience, he didn't dislike Madame, and he never cared about rumors. The blonde man cheered for Madame, saying it was the highest honor for that guy to be liked by her. Ruby didn't expect the blonde man to be so warm-hearted, although her bad mood wasn't improved by his comfort. But at least it gave her hope in winning over her husband. Making her way to the back garden, a small head peeked out from behind a rock. She was the king and queen's daughter Alien, one of the few healing angels in this world, because the queen was of slave origin. Even though she was a princess, her presence was very low. Ruby saw herself in her, so she liked her without any reason. She also had Barbie blonde hair. This brought them closer together. At this moment, Isuke's voice suddenly came from behind, startling both of them. Upon seeing her cold-faced cousin, Alien quickly thrust the flowers into Ruby's hands, then hurriedly ran away. Ruby thought he had come looking for the princess. How could that be? I came looking for you. Her usually cold husband had actually sought her out. Watching him getting closer and closer, Ruby had a bad feeling. She closed her eyes tightly. As long as husband spared her life in the future, he could do whatever he wanted now. The expected pain didn't come. Isuke rubbed his chin. Are you expecting me to kiss you? If she said she was expecting it, she'd probably be beaten to death. Besides, he was so fierce earlier. How dare she expect anything? Then you still dare say you like me? Isuke's face darkened. Is it not allowed? I do like you, because you're the first person who saved me from danger. Ruby was about to run out of words. Fortunately, husband's colleague needed him for something. She secretly rejoiced at finally being free. But unexpectedly, husband told her to wait right there. This was unprecedented. She sat on the bridge admiring the golden chrysanthemums in her hands, completely unaware of the anomaly in the water. The next second, she was pulled into the lake by some force. Endless cold enveloped her. Would she die like this? What a hasty ending. She should have thought this way, but surprisingly she felt no fear at all. Husband pulled her out with one grab. People discussed in whispers. How could there be monsters in the palace? The man's gaze was cold, making Ruby inexplicably afraid. Husband wouldn't think she deliberately fell into the water, right? With experience from last time, she directly collapsed into husband's arms. She wouldn't compromise this time. She raised her voice, crying so heartbreakingly. As misfortunes never come singly, the fall into water triggered her old illness. She felt a burning pain drilling into her stomach. Since being reborn into this body, her stomach pain would attack once or twice every year. At first, father would still find doctors for her, but no doctors could find anything wrong. Father thought she was pretending to be sick to avoid marriage. That look in his eyes seemed ready to devour her. Since then, she chose to endure. Anyway, these symptoms would disappear after a few days. What a pity though. That day when husband told her to wait, what was he going to say? Such a rare opportunity must be seized. She learned husband's location from the guards. She sneaked to the window outside. Several nights were actually drinking in broad daylight. It's really not easy trying to stay alive. She had become a paparazzi. Seeing husband's arrogant manner, getting close to him was truly difficult. Who are you talking about? A man's voice drifted from beside her, almost scared her soul away. But this person looked familiar, seemed to be that little assistant who appeared in the palace garden that day. The little assistant felt somewhat embarrassed. He saw Madame seemed to be hiding from something, so he couldn't help but follow along. His shy appearance was just like an obedient little puppy. The two crouched down and started chatting. The little assistant didn't understand why Madame was hiding. Upon hearing Madame missed her husband, he immediately understood. He said Isuke was indeed the type who's better admired from afar than up close. This almost made Ruby burst out laughing. The little assistant actually said husband was very gentle with her. He must have had his brains knocked loose by his boss. Just as they were chatting excitedly, Isuke suddenly appeared behind them again. Why don't you two just lie on the ground? Ruby originally came to win over her husband, but unexpectedly got a nosebleed. This had never happened before. Both Isuke and the blonde man were very worried. She was still thinking about whether it was proper. Getting a nosebleed in front of husband was so embarrassing. Then she staggered and fell backward. Fortunately, Isuke caught her. Why are you so hot? Ruby couldn't believe it. Even doctors couldn't diagnose it. How did husband know? He even personally wiped her nosebleed. She had always believed this strange illness was a side effect after entering someone else's body. But husband's reaction both puzzled and amazed her. However, she really couldn't hold on anymore. Under the two men's calls, she fainted into unconsciousness. In her sleep, she suddenly heard a woman crying. Was it Aaron or some maid? She jolted awake, got out of bed wanting to investigate. But as soon as she opened the door, she ran into husband and the doctor. Let alone this situation. Why did the doctor look at her with such disgust too? She just heard someone crying, so came out to check. The two men exchanged looks, feeling very puzzled. No one was crying, husband said seriously. But this really worried Ruby. She truly wasn't lying. I didn't say you were lying. Husband believed her so easily. After the doctor left, Isuke saw his wife looking dizzy, then embraced her in one motion. Next, he hoisted his wife up like a bundle. At such a crucial moment, Ruby didn't forget to showcase her superb acting. So handsome, you're truly my Prince Charming. She must really be quite ill. Isuke put her on the bed, while she still rambled on explaining that compared to Aaron, she had her own talents too. Seeing her obedient manner, Isuke didn't want to argue with her. Then what are you good at? Ruby looked delighted, acting of course. Isuke froze, wanting to say something. But halfway through he said never mind. Ruby behind him nearly exploded in anger. He always left things unsaid. Husband completely ignored her. The sound of the door closing left her speechless. Unexpectedly, Isuke was even more speechless, to the point of hitting the wall. Not only was he stubborn with words, his head wasn't soft either. Since Ruby woke up, Aaron had taken on the responsibility of monitoring her sister-in-law. She had never seen her brother so worried before. Seeing Ruby was mostly recovered, she invited her to participate in weekend horseback riding activities. Ruby agreed without thinking. This was a good social opportunity. Last time she had made made such a big joke. Everyone thought she was an insignificant person. She dressed up to appear gentle and virtuous. What she needed to do now was continue reinforcing this impression to everyone. Although it was called horseback riding activities, in reality it was just an excuse for nobles to look for potential love interests. Of course, love rival Floria wouldn't be missing. She hypocritically inquired about Ruby's health, then hugged Isuke's horse, superficially expressing joy at Ruby's recovery, but actually showing off how close Isuke's horse was to her. And her goal was achieved. Ruby couldn't help but grip her dress tightly. Now she understood why everyone said she had stolen Floria's position. Aaron seemed to notice her embarrassment. Immediately came forward to chat, letting her sister-in-law choose a horse she liked. Aaron said these horses were all very gentle, but Ruby couldn't see that at all. Even the horses discriminated against her. She already had trauma about the stables. At this time Isuke appeared again with his sour face. Hearing from Floria that his beloved wife wanted to go horseback riding, he gave her the same look as the horses. Ruby immediately started wildly praising him. "You look incredibly handsome today too." Isuke turned his head away, somewhat speechless, saying today was his day off and he had nothing to do. Ruby asked if he wanted to go riding together. He arrogantly said he was very busy. What a changeable person. Aaron knew what her brother was worried about. The doctor said horseback riding would be fine. Then she led the horse, wanting to take Floria away, making space for her brother and sister-in-law. But Floria seemed reluctant to leave. Under Aaron's urging, the whole stable was left with just Ruby and Isuke. Seeing the only attendant nearby, Isuke sent him away too, watching that person's hurriedly fleeing figure. Ruby's fear came flooding back. This was a good chance to get closer, but her body uncontrollably dropped to its knees. "I'm sorry, I was wrong, I'm ungrateful, I'm beyond saving." Isuke's brows furrowed tightly. He picked up the riding crop from the ground, feeling indescribable emotions, then forcefully threw the crop far behind him. She didn't understand why this woman brought the whip. Seeing husband unhappy, Ruby became more terrified. "If I brought the wrong thing, I can go back and get it right away." "Get it to do what to you?" Isuke's furrowed brows deepened further. Ruby lay on the ground breaking out in cold sweat. "I know I did wrong." Isuke could hardly communicate normally with her. What exactly had this woman been through? She told the woman to shut up, but Ruby couldn't hear anything. "Shut up." Isuke pulled her up in one motion. At this moment, Ruby finally came to her senses. She thought acting had become easy for her, but in this stable, the childhood trauma of being abused by her family always controlled her body. Just now Isuke was teaching her how to get close to horses. He told her to bring over something nearby, but she reflexively grabbed the riding crop. When she saw the apple that husband had brought over, Ruby finally understood. It was all husband's fault for not being clear. She had been so scared. She fed the apple to husband's horse, muttering for the horse to be nice to her. Isuke stared at her with eyes full of confusion and some heartache, so he decided to share a horse with his wife. Both Ruby and the attendant were very surprised. They rode the same horse. This situation shocked everyone even more. The cold duke who never approached women had actually changed. Everyone's gaze was astonished, but in Ruby's eyes these gazes were full of darkness. She knew without looking that husband's expression must be full of killing intent now. And as soon as Isuke dismounted, he started arguing with his sister Aaron. The cause of their argument was Ruby. Aaron was very unhappy. "How was I supposed to know your new wife couldn't go to such places?" "I'm not trying to blame you." "Then how do you want me?" Aaron turned her head, questioning why brother's attitude was so inconsistent. Seeing the two arguing intensely, Ruby sat restlessly. Floria couldn't listen anymore either. She pulled the two apart. "Rather than arguing here, why not take your wife around more?" Only then did Isuke remember his wife still on horseback. While Ruby was hesitating how to dismount, a hand pulled her. Then she crashed straight into husband's embrace. Heart-fluttering moment lasted just an instant. "Stop fighting." She looked pitiful and vulnerable. She really admired her own superb acting, but didn't notice the eyes staring intently at her from the side. Isuke, who usually stayed away from women, being so public with his wife today. This inevitably made some people jealous, like the blonde woman who had pursued him before. She was always speaking with hidden barbs, trying to embarrass Ruby. But Ruby didn't take the bait. Instead, she played dumb and tried to befriend the blonde woman. The atmosphere became somewhat awkward. At this point, Floria very timely said, "Let's go riding together." "Actually, Miss Sora isn't bad. She just likes Isuke too much." Floria defended the blonde woman, telling Ruby not to be angry. She hadn't expected the new wife to be so skilled at riding. She pointed at the path ahead. "Let's see who's better." Ruby immediately became spirited. This was a good chance to get close to Floria. So with Floria's yielding, she set off first. Leaves danced in the gentle breeze. That was the scent of freedom. No need to watch others' expressions, no need to act. At this moment she was just herself. She was about to unleash her full power and fight it out. But when she turned back to call Floria, there was no one behind. She was puzzled. Then that familiar black mist attacked again, then suddenly wrapped around her foot. The horse was instantly startled. She was thus entangled by the black mist and dragged deeper. When she woke up again, she lay alone in the forest. Before she could react, strange rustling sounds came from behind. A monster with green eyes and long ears, looking like a big dumpling. Ruby was quite scared. Was this a raccoon or a rabbit? The monster suddenly opened its huge mouth. Inside was filled with white bones. Who wouldn't be scared seeing this? Ruby's heart was in her throat. The monster flapped its two short arms, then approached Ruby. Next it suddenly hugged Ruby. Ruby struggled and screamed desperately, thinking she would die here today. But the next second, the monster closed its terrifying mouth. It seemed to have seen something. It took Ruby to hide behind a large rock. Under the silver moonlight's cover, strange sounds kept coming. Ruby curiously peeked out, wanting to see what was happening, but was pushed down by the monster. The sound of horse hooves gradually became clearer. Ruby felt very uneasy. Instinct told her she absolutely couldn't make any sound. When she saw what was before her eyes, she almost cried out. A knight holding a head in his hand, with black mist constantly seeping from his neck, rode a horse seeming to search for prey everywhere. He stopped in front of where Ruby and the monster were hiding. The intense pressure made it impossible to breathe. Fortunately, he finally rode away gradually. Ruby finally let out a sigh of relief. She turned to look at the monster. That black mist appeared again. She could no longer care about the intense pain in her body. Just as she wondered what that thing was, a leaf was patted onto the bleeding spot on her head. Only then did she realize the monster was saving her, and it could understand human speech. It could only understand her words. She asked the monster to help her one more time. She wanted to go home but couldn't find the way back. The monster's dejected expression was so cute, probably sad to part with Ruby. But it still turned its back and waved its short arms, gesturing for Ruby to ride on. Ruby grabbed its big ears, which felt soft and comfortable. She obediently lay on the monster's back. I'm ready. The monster immediately took a leap, carrying her up into the sky. Meanwhile, Iskai discovered his wife was missing and searched the mountains with his men. But when he found Ruby, he was full of blame, believing women were nothing but trouble, and advised her not to try attracting his attention with such tricks. His words were like knives, cutting Ruby with terror. Her voice trembled even as she apologized. This time she cried from genuine hurt. Iskai had a sharp tongue but soft heart. He couldn't bear to see this woman cry. Then he scooped his wife up in his arms. Forget it, let's go home for treatment first. Ruby couldn't understand why this man was so fickle. Though he was fierce, his embrace was addictively warm. Without realizing it, she fell asleep. When she next opened her eyes, she was back in their room. Her husband had been waiting, wanting to hear her reasonable explanation. This was quite unexpected. Ruby explained that Freya had initially suggested horseback riding. Then she encountered monsters on the way. She told him everything but hid her encounter with Monster Bubble. Iskai clearly didn't believe her, because Freya told him Ruby was stubborn and wouldn't listen, insisting on wandering deep into the forest. Ruby's eyes widened in disbelief. She had seemed so friendly earlier. How could she change so suddenly? Was she afraid of taking responsibility, or did she want me dead? The original story revolved around the male and female leads, without much introduction to Freya. Only known as a popular and capable noblewoman, Ruby's mind was in chaos. You should go back. Her husband suggested divorce at this moment. He was willing to let Ruby leave unconditionally. This was completely unexpected for Ruby. Though they would divorce someday, it definitely shouldn't be now. If she left, no one could stop her brother from harming Aaron. Just thinking of her brother's cold face made her uncontrollably afraid. Her husband was still telling her to go home beside her. She wouldn't go back. In her shock, she knocked over the bedside lamp. She knelt down, clutching her husband's pant leg. I can't go back. Tears covered her whole face. It's all my fault. You can punish me however you want. She desperately begged for her husband's forgiveness. Just like what happened in the stable earlier that day. Iskai gritted his teeth in anger, but he wavered. He grabbed Ruby's shoulders. You're really driving me crazy. You might as well act high and mighty like a princess. He shouted nearly hysterically. Why did he have to care about this woman's life or death? He had almost gone mad trying to find out why his wife disappeared. Ruby had never seen her husband like this, but one thing was certain. That was that he cared about her. Though she knew this was a place of 99 deaths and 1 life. She still thought everything would be fine if she didn't follow the original story's path. Unexpectedly, Freya, who had shown her no hostility, became the first person who wanted her dead. Early the next morning, Freya came to apologize. She said she was too scared to tell the truth. Ruby saw through all her tricks. But now wasn't the time to strike back. She was completely outmatched by Freya. Moreover, no one here would believe her words. After all, she was a foreigner with a notorious past. After that day, she never saw her husband again, and he warned her to stay obediently at home. Aaron resumed monitoring her 3 daily meals. But since she was busy with her brother's birthday celebration, she assigned the head maid to look after her sister-in-law. However, the maids were all opportunists. They barely took care of her. Though it was annoying, she still needed to prepare her husband's birthday gift. She wanted to make an embroidery by hand. But the head maid suddenly appeared like a ghost. Hearing that the madame hadn't decided what to embroider, she very kindly suggested embroidering a willow tree. She said the young master often climbed willow trees as a child, but that tree was gone now and he always regretted its loss. Ruby gratefully thanked her for the suggestion. But she wasn't foolish enough to embroider a willow tree. It was clearly a trap. In the original story, Iskai's mother had hanged herself on a willow tree. So it was confirmed, the head maid had been trying to harm her all along. After staying up all night, she finally finished her work, golden daisies symbolizing happiness. She wanted to give it to her husband personally. But her old illness struck at just this moment. Intense pain surged through her stomach. The head maid brought bad news, saying the young master wouldn't let Madame attend the banquet. Seeing Madame unwell, she offered to deliver the embroidery to Iskai on her behalf. Ruby would be stupid to give it to her. She didn't believe the head maid's words. She couldn't just lie in bed letting others bully her. She called for the maid Lucy. Lucy had accepted her favors before. She used the same trick again, secretly slipping her a gemstone. With Lucy's help, she successfully escaped. She hid in the bushes by the banquet entrance, just waiting for her husband to appear. But the weather wasn't cooperative, thunder rumbled and rain poured down. She was soaked like a drowned rat. The prepared gift was also wet. She didn't dare enter, hiding at the hall entrance. The banquet inside was lively. Freya even gave Iskai a sparkling purple gemstone. Ruby looked at her wrinkled embroidery. She quietly closed the door. She could never enter that world. If she went in, she could only imagine embarrassing herself. As she prepared to leave, she was almost knocked flying again. Whoever it was, she just wanted to quickly leave. But that person called out to her, "Madam, are you unwell?" Hearing that voice, Ruby knew it was Roland. "Just scold me directly," she had self-awareness. "No need to insult me with songs like last time." These overly direct words left Roland stunned. Ruby sniffled pathetically. But when she turned around, she was startled. 3 men were staring intently at her. Ruby felt mortified. If her husband got angry at her for sneaking out, wouldn't that be even more embarrassing? But at least she didn't want to stay in front of Freya's brother, so she turned to flee. Yet she stepped on her dress hem and fell down. This was utterly humiliating. Iskai held her. "What am I going to do with you?" Ruby perfectly misunderstood her husband's meaning again, repeatedly apologizing, saying she shouldn't have come out. Iskai looked completely puzzled. Ruby was aggrieved. "I know you don't allow yourself to attend the party, but I still want to send the gift over." "What exactly are you talking about?" Hearing her husband's question, she finally realized the head maid had been causing trouble. Her face instantly bloomed into a smile. Iskai finally showed a tender expression, though caring words still wouldn't come out. The blonde man pulled Roland's ear saying, "I warned you last time not to sing such songs." Iskai turned his head. "What songs?" Ruby became extremely nervous. Though she wanted to see Roland get scolded, she cared more about her husband's feelings. So she pretended to sneeze. Iskai immediately held his wife tightly. "Are you all right?" They had been married for 3 years yet had never shared a bed. This had infuriated the old duke. Even his daughter knew it was her brother's issue. But he blamed his daughter-in-law for not fulfilling her duties. Ruby could understand. After all, with her disgraceful past, the duke only agreed to this marriage to cure his son's stubborn abstinence. Once they became true husband and wife, Ruby's country would have no reason to break the marriage. So he hoped his daughter-in-law would soon be with his son. This was also what Ruby wanted. This way, if her brother wanted to break the marriage, he would have to pay a heavy price. The plan to assassinate Eren would inevitably be delayed. Perhaps Iskai would also no longer want to send her away because of the trouble. The duke's idea was quite perfect. But the question was, how could she win over her husband? Thinking back to the birthday banquet, her husband wasn't just gentle. He also took her to the banquet hall. She met Princess Alien and the blonde knight's sister. The 3 of them had great fun together. Iskai suddenly appeared behind her. Seeing her crouching on the ground, he extended his hand. For the first time, Ruby truly felt her husband's kindness. She took out her prepared embroidery, offering her blessing. Hearing his wife say she had stayed up all night to embroider, Iskai was startled. He slowly accepted it. There was even an attached letter of reflection. The letter in his hand grew tighter. "Are you silly?" Her husband showed that gentle expression again. He said he really liked her gift. So early the next morning, she brought fruit to her husband's training ground. Her husband looked cool while sparring with others. Even the sweat sliding down his cheeks looked crystal clear. He was simply too handsome. Ruby and the young assistant cheered from the side. Iskai turned back with another death glare. The young assistant got beaten up by the blonde man for slacking off. So noisy, Iskai wiped his sweat with an impatient face. Hearing his wife praise his handsomeness, he walked to the side and sat down, casually grabbed an apple and started eating. Watching her husband's sweat drops sliding down his neck, Ruby instinctively reached out to wipe them. But her husband looked at her warily. It's filthy. Ruby didn't understand, she had just washed her hands before coming. This nearly drove Iskai crazy. He wasn't saying she was filthy. Ruby sighed heavily, this man was truly mercurial. Although their relationship had improved after the birthday banquet, Iskai still seemed difficult to get close to. When she thick-skinnedly brought up the Duke, the atmosphere instantly became more tense. Just thinking about having to speak about such things made her want to cry. She indirectly expressed wanting an angel's love. Her husband became even more disdainful. While searching through the fruit, he complained about his wife's poor thinking. Ruby hesitated for a long time. She obliquely conveyed the Duke's meaning. Unexpectedly, her husband couldn't understand. With no choice, Ruby had to embarrassingly ask him for their first night. Her husband told her not to mind the Duke's words. Just do as she pleased. But for Ruby, this was a matter of life and death. And she really didn't want to go home. She confessed emotionally that she only wanted to stay by her husband's side. Iskai stood up looking at her. If you change your mind now, there's still time. I absolutely won't change my mind. Seeing his wife so determined, Iskai turned and left, saying, then see you tonight. But nothing happened between them that night. To prevent her from being bullied. Even though nothing happened between them last night, her husband still invited her to have breakfast together, and said they must eat lunch and dinner together from now on. He would also take her to the temple at noon. Everything was developing in a good direction. It's just that last night's opportunity was wasted. She felt unsatisfied. Next time she would definitely take the initiative. But at this time, someone who shouldn't have appeared came again. Freya pretended to be full of joy. Though clearly here to pick a fight, she said she came to see her bishop granduncle. She even brought her brother and a group of knights, instantly making the atmosphere awkward. At this moment, footsteps approached. Roland's group completely lost their previous arrogance. They hurriedly stood at attention, terrified. Ruby looked confused. Her husband suddenly appeared. You're late. He asked about the flower crown in his wife's hands. Ruby instantly beamed with joy, saying she made it specially for him. Iskai complained, while still showing concern about his wife's dirty hands. Seeing the couple's casual interaction, Freya felt extremely uncomfortable. After hesitating for a moment, she put her hand on Iskai's shoulder again, appearing carefree while joking, but actually trying to show intimacy in front of Ruby. When she brought up Roland, Iskai's expression darkened. Freya continued speaking on her own, saying her brother had offended Madame before, so today they came to sincerely apologize. But Ruby didn't believe it. Why should she accept an insincere apology? Ruby flicked her hair. What are you talking about? I don't understand at all. This caught the siblings off guard. But Freya wasn't just anyone, she was excellent at playing pure and innocent. She said hearing Roland's words made her feel heartbroken for Madame. But Ruby didn't take it to heart at all. Freya's mouth twitched. Roland immediately stepped forward, insisting on apologizing no matter what. Ruby really wanted to slap him twice. But with her husband present, it was impossible for her to be wronged. One look from Iskai scared Roland into hiding behind his sister. Hearing his wife say it was nothing, he bent down again. Are you really all right? The sudden concern scared Ruby into a cold sweat, her tongue tied in knots. Iskai pressed his hand to her forehead, thinking his wife must be sick. Freya stood to the side, reluctant to leave, saying, could it be from the cold wind? Madame has always been delicate. But Iskai completely ignored her. He directly took his wife into his arms, then turned to leave, only leaving these words, remember to come apologize properly next time, then disappeared from the siblings' sight. Freya chewed her fingers in anger. What was that woman anyway? Why did everyone protect her? And how could Ruby miss such a rare opportunity? She directly kissed her husband's cheek. But when she turned her head, she was mortified. A group of white-robed priests were shocked. She had done such a thing in such a sacred place. Ruby was dying of embarrassment. They hadn't come to the temple for so long that the high priest was worried something was wrong. Now it seemed he had worried unnecessarily. Ruby was speechless. As everyone knows, I don't stick to traditions. Iskai clearly wanted to protect his wife. But hearing the high priest direct blame toward his wife, he changed his tone, saying it was just a joke, pulling his wife close. He said they hadn't come to the temple because his wife wasn't feeling well, believing it wouldn't be long before they visited again, meaning it wouldn't be long before they had children. For a moment, both men wore smiles but were actually competing. Looking at those high priests' sour faces, it was clear they greatly disliked Iskai. After all, he was the king's nephew. The temple and royal family had long been at odds. In a few days, the temple would hold a charity event, and the high priest invited Ruby to attend. Iskai directly blocked his wife, saying he would attend too. Though the high priest was very unwilling, he couldn't refuse. Soon it was the day of the event. Ruby had wanted to chat alone with her husband. But as soon as he appeared, he was surrounded by people. That's when the high priest found her. The high priest had actually been looking forward to the princess's arrival. When he was young and stranded in Romana, unable to return home, it was the Pope's monastery that took him in. Though Ruby was mentally prepared. If this person was a family spy, it would indeed be a troublesome matter. But this wasn't the only worry. Freya had also attended the event. There were many fine paintings here. They were the Duke's favorites, and Freya suggested Ruby buy one as a gift for her father-in-law. Though it was a good idea. Coming from her mouth, it wasn't necessarily so well-intentioned. Most importantly, Ruby was poor. And she didn't understand paintings. Freya continued with feigned enthusiasm, saying Romana was famous for its paintings. Erin quickly changed the subject, saying she had discussed with her brother. They planned to find a maid for her sister-in-law with no family connections. Since Freya's mother had extensive connections, Erin entrusted this task to her. Ruby was internally against it. But this was also a good opportunity to find help. Freya was very enthusiastic. But things gradually went wrong. She suddenly coughed up blood in front of everyone. Then fainted unconscious on the ground. Ruby rushed over immediately. Seeing Freya struggling to cough blood, Ruby couldn't help but empathize. But her husband suddenly pushed her away. She was stunned. "Get out!" Her husband's harsh rebuke left her hand frozen in mid-air. She had never seen her husband so anxious. Looking at the blood on her sleeve, she trembled uncontrollably. In her previous life, the only sister who loved her also fell in front of her like today. "It was you, it must have been you." Hearing Roland's accusation, Ruby finally realized she'd been made the culprit. Only the blonde knight Ivan was concerned about Madame, searching everywhere for Ruby. When he saw this scene, just as he was about to teach that crazy boy a lesson, someone beat Roland and knocked him to the ground. It was Roland's father. Bowing 90 degrees, he apologized to Ruby for his son's rudeness. However, one wave hadn't settled before another arose. Thunder suddenly struck in the sky. Monsters had broken into the temple. Ruby helplessly hugged herself. She felt sick with nausea. Fortunately, the blood-stained sleeve was quickly torn away by Ivan. At this point, she hadn't realized just how dangerous that was. In the chaos caused by the monsters, the temple had become complete mayhem. By the time it ended, most of the day had passed. Fortunately, Freya's life wasn't in danger. The servant who brought the wine had vanished. The only clue left was the source of the poison. It was a liquid from a certain stone. This stone was a holy relic, only the Pope's office with permission could produce it. So as the Pope's daughter, Ruby became the prime suspect behind it all. Hearing the Duke's analysis, Ruby understood no one would believe she was innocent. But the Duke surprisingly said he believed her. Because Ruby was his daughter-in-law. Ruby buried her head in her arms, utterly at a loss for words. Everyone said she poisoned Freya out of jealousy. Seeing her cry so sadly, the Duke felt helpless. He was also afraid of women crying, so he quickly took out his handkerchief. He repeatedly stated his position. Whoever dared to falsely accuse his daughter-in-law was insulting the entire Omida family. So please stop crying. Though Ruby was touched, she also clearly understood her situation. Now there were several possibilities in Freya's poisoning incident. Either it was revenge against their family, or it was done by Romana. The biggest suspect was her perverted brother. Because he worried she would develop feelings for this place, so he orchestrated everything. Thinking of this, Ruby felt desperate. Thinking of how her husband looked at her. It was still etched in her mind. Perhaps Iskai already regretted being so kind to her recently. Her mind was already in chaos, and her old illness struck again. She wanted to drink some water to ease it, but discovered the water had been tampered with. The discomfort in her throat made her cough continuously. She suddenly felt envious of Freya. At least when she was sick, she had so many family and friends around her. Erin suddenly appeared behind her at this moment. Before she could react, she was pressed against the wall. "Why don't you just die?" After enduring torment through 2 lifetimes, she had developed an eating disorder. Due to habitual vomiting, her index finger bore bite marks. This secret even her family hadn't discovered, yet in just a few months with her sister-in-law. The sister-in-law suspected something the first time she saw her hand. So, whenever she had the chance, she would make Ruby eat more. Are you doing this to get attention, or are you afraid the Duke family's food will dirty your mouth? If you want to die, just do it quietly, Erin screamed hysterically. Because this is the only thing I can control. The air instantly froze. Ruby's answer made her realize her own impropriety. What's wrong with me? I'm sorry. She hurriedly turned and left, leaving Ruby standing there bewildered. Because of Freya's poisoning, the high priest wanted to see her. She came to the temple alone. Though she had just been here recently, it felt like several autumns had passed. While lost in thought, she overheard people arguing. It was Roland and Andy, the two were actually arguing about Ruby. Roland was very unhappy. His sister had nearly died coughing blood. Yet Andy said Ruby was innocent and asked him to go home and sleep. He was very angry. Flirting with my brother while trying to steal men from my sister, shameless. Andy grabbed his clothes, wanting to punch him twice, but Roland had reached a point of no return. If he saw that woman again, he would definitely tear apart her ugly face. Every word was unbearable. Ruby hugged her head, unsure if she was heartbroken or scared. So someone already hated her to such an extent. Waves of dizziness came over her. She was so tired. She crouched in the bushes, just wanting to stay quiet. But what then? Where else could she go? Was there anywhere left in this world for her? Her body hurt, her heart hurt too. She had originally just wanted to play her role well, to live properly until the end. But Iskai's kindness towards her, his trust in her, how he protected her. She started to hope that this man was different from others. While she was feeling dejected, a familiar voice suddenly came. It was Monster Bubble who had come to find her. Seeing Bubble specially come to find her, Ruby felt both touched and grieved. She felt terrible now but was happy to see Bubble. Her nose started bleeding again. Bubble felt distressed. Quickly reached out, ready to carry Ruby on its back and elope. Ruby was initially somewhat worried. But thinking of what just happened, she smiled. Everyone probably couldn't wait for her to disappear. Perhaps leaving like this was right. And that man she cared about by now had gone 3 days and nights without sleep, his handsome face haggard. His good friend was nearly worried to death. If this continued, the murderer might not be found before Iskai died first. Ivan knew that the poison person wasn't just anyone, but his childhood friend Freya. Iskai denied this. He didn't know why he was like this. After Freya woke up, she kept saying strange things to him, still intimately pulling at him. His mind was in chaos, unable to think clearly. Remembering how Ruby looked at him that day, those lifeless eyes were deeply etched in his mind. If the monsters hadn't been driven back that day, or if even a drop of Freya's poisoned blood had splashed onto Ruby, he dared not imagine the consequences. That's why he had urgently pushed her away. Everything I did was for you, you should understand, right? A colleague rushed over in panic. Iskai, your wife has disappeared. Meanwhile, Ruby woke up in a cave. She was nearly scared to death. A huge eagle was eating not far away. Ruby had originally planned to play dead. But with a plop, a horse leg fell right in front of her, with 2 flies buzzing around it. Ruby was completely speechless. Her scream echoed throughout the mountain. Bubble anxiously ran back, seeing the scene before him. It was furious, shouting while throwing the horse leg to the eagle. They argued for quite a while before Ruby realized they were friends. Hearing Ruby's voice, Bubble immediately turned around, then handed over the blueberries he had picked. Ruby paused. If she didn't eat them, Bubble would be sad, right? She chewed slowly, seeing the 2 little cuties' expectant faces. She gave a thumbs up in approval. The eagle and Bubble immediately hugged each other in joy. Though somewhat exaggerated, it was really cute. In the blink of an eye, Ruby had been missing for 4 days. Iskai still hadn't found her. Since finding that shoe in the area, he had turned the whole mountain upside down. His heart was now like this continuous rainy weather. Iskai went 3 days and nights without eating or drinking, without sleep, torturing himself into this ghost-like state, single-mindedly wanting to solve the case quickly to clear his wife's name. Even if this matter was really related to his wife, it didn't matter. He would handle it without hesitation. He always felt that even without saying it, his wife would understand. But reality had slapped him in the face. Someone who usually traveled with many attendants had disappeared for half a day without anyone noticing. Who should he blame? Blame the high priest who invited Ruby to the temple? Blame Aaron, who was completely focused on Freya? Or blame Freya, who kept demanding Aaron's company? But the true culprit was himself. He was wrong. He had never doubted the servant's loyalty, especially the head maid who loved Aaron like a daughter. But he had never thought his wife's arrival would make her everyone's thorn in the flesh. On his birthday, he learned the head maid had deceived Ruby on her own accord. But out of her loyalty, Iskai had forgiven her. Now he realized how ridiculous his mistake was. He should have corrected things right then. He had always rejected marriage, not wanting to become a jerk like his father. But unknowingly, he had already become someone like his father. His coldness had created the current situation. Now it was too late to say anything. He knew what the knights had left unsaid. Your wife is dead, she can't be found. But he didn't want to give up. At least not until he saw her remains. He felt unprecedented helplessness. He prayed to his deceased mother, praying his wife was still alive. But he couldn't even remember his mother's face clearly. That night when he shared a bed with his wife, he had seen his wife's vulnerability. If all this disappeared, what would he do alone? On the other side, Ruby was living happily in the depths of the forest. Bubble and the eagle stayed by her side. Other monsters occasionally came to observe. She instantly became a tourist attraction in the forest. Moreover, Bubble's friends often came to forage. Their bouncing around was extremely cute. Whether it was because of herself or the innate affinity of this body's original owner, she could genuinely feel these monsters were all friendly to her. Just wondering what Iskai was doing. Did he know she was gone? Perhaps even if he knew, he would just make a perfunctory search for appearance's sake. Look how pathetic she was, really didn't know what she was expecting. Her every move was noticed by Bubble. It ran over to pull at Ruby's sighing face. Then pulled at its own face too, wanting her to be happier. Ruby grinned, is that so? It seems nice here too, why don't I just live here with you all? Anyway, I'm just disliked if I go back. Bubble drooped its long ears, once again reaching out its pitifully short arms, embracing Ruby. Instantly, warmth washed over her. Thank you. Ruby really enjoyed this tender moment. But the weather was uncooperative. In the blink of an eye, rain started drizzling. Ruby urged everyone back to the cave. Yes, where else could she escape to? If she ran away with a full purse, she'd probably be robbed before even setting out. If she hid in a convent, her perverted brother would find her quickly. Though this place wasn't exactly easy either. At least she had Bubble and the eagle accompanying her. Her mind was in chaos, not noticing the path beneath her feet. She stepped into empty air. She fell down. Looking around, it was pitch black. Bubble and the eagle jumped down after her. They first checked if Ruby was okay. But it was so dark here, nothing could be seen clearly. Ruby was extremely worried. But cheers came from behind. This place was actually full of various red rubies. This was simply striking it rich. Ruby's jaw hadn't closed since the shock. With such a mind, going from riding a bicycle to a motorcycle, becoming a world-class rich woman wasn't just a dream. In her excitement, she noticed something even more dazzling than the jewels nearby. Driven by curiosity, she reached out to touch it. But the moment she made contact, that thing seemed to move. With a rumbling sound, a huge creature emerged from the ground. What on earth was this thing? Ruby started bowing frantically to it, saying they really just fell in by accident, begging the monster to spare them. The monster also looked confused, its mouth continuously emitting thousand-year-old breath. With a swing of its tail, it swept Ruby into the air. Now she was really going to die. Meanwhile, Iskai was looking utterly dejected. At this moment, the knights caught two hunters. They said they saw a witch in a cave. They had originally planned to go back for help, but then saw an eagle. They were so scared they ran away. The knights thought they were talking about a banshee, but they insisted repeatedly, saying what they saw was definitely a witch. Iskai immediately wanted to go without another word. The knights all thought the poacher's words couldn't be trusted. After all, that place was a restricted area. Even if it were true, it might not be madam. Iskai wouldn't listen to any of it. If anyone's tired, just leave. But after saying this, he realized he had gone mad. Living people who entered that forest rarely came out alive. The reason he only brought so few people was because he couldn't trust anyone else. Whether it was the unprecedented frequent monster appearances, or Ruby repeatedly being at the center of incidents with accumulating suspicions, made him start to be certain. As they gradually went deeper into the forest, Ivan still called out to stop Iskai, saying they had reached near the Ram cave. He had a bad feeling. But before he could finish speaking, a series of roars split the sky, followed by a woman's scream. Meanwhile, in the cave, Ruby was hanging upside down in midair by the dragon. Bubble and the eagle were frantic, one gnawing at the dragon's leg, the other poking at the dragon's face. But the dragon's skin was too thick, and it was only interested in Ruby. Ruby couldn't open her eyes from the thousand-year breath, thinking she was about to die. Unexpectedly, the next second, her feet gently touched the ground. What was going on now? Could this creature understand what she was saying? Taking advantage while the dragon wasn't paying attention, she quietly tried to sneak away. But she had barely moved when she was surrounded by the dragon's tail again. The dragon roared at her. What do you want? Are you playing with me? Ruby snorted coldly. Will you let me go or not? The dragon wouldn't back down either, opening its mouth to show its sharp teeth. This nearly scared her to death. Jewels clattered to the ground. She really couldn't understand what the dragon wanted to do. Suddenly, a short hand quickly lifted her into the air. It was the eagle and Bubble. They fled toward the cave entrance. The dragon chased relentlessly behind. That was close. They had barely escaped. They sat on the ground still terrified. That dragon was simply too scary. Cold snowflakes fell on her face. Ruby was mesmerized. She closed her eyes to enjoy this rare snowy scene. All along, she had lived carefully watching others' faces. She couldn't even remember when she last saw snow. Suddenly, a familiar voice came from behind. It can't be him. She kept denying while turning around. How could you be here? Perseverance pays off. He finally found her. Looking at the two fierce monsters, Iskai's first instinct was to worry about his wife's safety, drawing his sword to protect her. But Ruby's response left him stunned. Please don't come closer, I beg you. Not only did Ruby refuse him, but she also begged him not to help her. He opened and closed his mouth wanting to explain, but didn't know what to say. Get away from me, Ruby used all her strength. Then fled from her husband's presence. She wanted to just disappear, her past life had left her scarred beyond measure. Even after crossing over to this world, the pain of living made her unable to distinguish truth from fiction. She foolishly hoped she could have family here, that someone would love her. However, reality rarely meets expectations. Let her stay here and fend for herself. Running too hastily, her foot slipped and she stumbled to the ground. Tears mixed with white snow. The snowy day was cold, but not as cold as her frozen heart. At this moment, the familiar roar came again. The giant dragon appeared before her eyes once more. Looking at its glowing green eyes, Ruby no longer felt her previous fear. Rather than lingering here in misery, she might as well end it all. She slowly closed her eyes. And her reaction deeply pained Iskai's heart. Although in their previous meetings she was always full of lies, always talking nonsense. But at least whenever she looked at Iskai, she did so with a bright smile. If he had said those words earlier, would the outcome have been different? Yes, he should have asked earlier. Every time he saw Ruby suffering, he wanted to ask what she had been through. Why did she fear him so much yet desperately try to stay by his side? But he never had the heart to ask. Until just now when she pushed him away. He was stunned and dazed. Just as his thoughts were in chaos, that terrifying roar passed overhead. Could the dragon have grabbed the madam in its claws? The knights had barely finished speaking when Iskai rushed out. Although there was still much he didn't understand, he still couldn't abandon her. Ruby slowly opened her eyes. This soft sensation startled her heart. The dragon was staring at her very gently. What was going on? Why am I still alive? Why didn't the dragon eat me? She reached out her hand, stroking the dragon's large nose bridge. You might as well eat me now. Her eyes were full of desolation, the words might as well eat her caught in her throat. The dragon seemed to sense her sadness, and moved closer to her face, letting out low rumbles. Ruby could feel the dragon was trying to comfort her. But she was very worried about Bubble and the eagle. She even apologized to the dragon on their behalf. After all, they were just trying to save her. Suddenly a sharp pain shot through her. She lifted her skirt, only to see her foot was red and swollen. It must have been sprained when she fell earlier. With a plop, a glowing blue mushroom fell in front of her. It was quite pretty. Looking at the dragon's eye expression. Are you telling me to use it on the injury? The dragon nodded satisfactorily. Ruby lay on its thigh. This dragon was really strange. And wasn't she even stranger? Thank you so much. Is this where you chose to hide? Iskai appeared at the cave entrance with his sword. Those eyes looked like they could devour someone. In that instant, Ruby's fear of him surged through her whole body again. Iskai walked into the cave silently. Sensing danger, the dragon let out a roar. This really angered Iskai. After kidnapping his wife, it had the nerve to roar at him. He raised his sword ready to duel. Ruby was terrified. But she was more afraid the dragon would get hurt because of her. She gripped the mushroom tighter and tighter. Stop, you stop right there. The mushroom hit Iskai hard in the face. While the physical damage wasn't much, it dealt 10,000 points of psychological damage. Iskai covered his face cursing, damn it, but his body was swaying unsteadily. Ruby froze in place. What had he done? It would be terrible if Iskai got even angrier. She quickly apologized, saying it wasn't intentional. The dragon was baring its teeth behind her, still refusing to calm down. No, you stop too. She shook her head at the dragon. She didn't want Iskai to get hurt either. Fortunately, the dragon was obedient and quieted down. She finally breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at the stumbling Iskai, she wondered if she had thrown the mushroom too hard. Why wasn't Iskai moving, and why did he look like he would fall over if pushed? Ruby didn't know why either. Seeing her husband's sharp gaze, should she first explain that she didn't poison Freya, or first deny that she tried to run away? But what good would saying more do? This man would never believe her. Even so, she didn't want her husband to misunderstand her. She hadn't poisoned anyone, and wasn't a witch controlling monsters. I really didn't do anything, tears sprayed forth. She felt extremely wronged. She really hadn't meant to run away. When she was suffering, it was those monsters who saved her. She begged her husband not to hurt those little ones and not to send her back to her family. She was prepared to accept punishment. I won't. Iskai reached out, crouching down and gently caressing her cheek. His gentle gaze was full of heartache, softly comforting his wife not to cry. He took out the shoes he had picked up along the way. then lifted his wife's foot to put the shoe on her. "I won't let anyone call you a witch." Looking at Ruby's swollen foot, he felt indescribable feelings. "I was wrong." Though the words were few, touched Ruby's heart. The man before her felt like a stranger. Wasn't Iskai always annoyed by her causing trouble, detesting her deeply? He should have wished for her disappearance more than anyone. What had caused this change in her husband? While she was lost in thought, Iskai reached out his hand again. "Come home with me." This was something she never expected. She glanced at the dragon beside her, only to see it secretly giving her a knowing look. Ruby understood, that's right, she was human, how could she live here? So she reached for her husband's hand. Her racing heartbeat echoed throughout the valley. At this moment, Iskai finally dared to hold her tight. He let out a long breath. "Everything's all right now." These words seemed more like comfort for himself than for Ruby. He had really almost lost her.